Hello. So I was listed as right now in this time slot for the equity thing, but that's a mistake. I'm not doing that, but I am introducing the Path to Leadership group, which we're switching around with scheduled for later in the morning. The rest of the people here with me are Jacob Kelly from Fleet and Jeremy Hunt from Facilities and Jen Thomason, and we all work together, and Tanya will be here electronically to put together something about what we've been learning in the Path to Leadership program about change. And the Path to Leadership program is a one-year training program, kind of personal skills development program in the city. We have one of the trainers who's going to be here this afternoon. We got to go to one of the change management trainings that he did that was all day long. And we have speakers from the city, and we do kind of internal self-assessment, personal development exercises and things like that. So we were asked to talk about what we've learned regarding change and work together to do this presentation. So the question, is change bad? Do any of you have a sense that you don't like change? It kind of depends. I think there's three different kinds of change. These aren't the only types of change, but these are examples of types of change that might be good or bad. Personally driven, self-initiated change is usually seen as kind of positive, like someone starting a new exercise program, or doing something like the Path to Leadership program. Organizational change is something that we all experience working in the city, kind of like when a new mayor comes in, that can be a big change on the organization, something that we don't have control of and can be good or bad. Culture change, things like gender-neutral bathrooms or using gender-neutral language are things that also can happen in our work in the city. And one thing I learned in the Path to Leadership is that change is kind of like risk. Where I work in risk management, because there is a potential of loss and failure. So we have the fish jumping into the new fish bowl. The new fish bowl is going to be great with more kelp or whatever that is. But there's also a chance that the fish might miss, and go out and flopping on the ground. So there is a sense of danger and challenge to change, like with risk. And some of us, a lot of us, have a sort of comfort zone of doing things the way that we've always done them, and especially if we think that the way we're doing things is the right way to do things. Next slide. So this is a quote from Albert Einstein, who you'll see later in our presentation as well. Anyone who's never made a mistake has never tried anything new. So my favorite part of the Path to Leadership program so far has been reading a book that we were assigned called Mistakes Were Made But Not By Me. The tagline is, why we justify foolish beliefs, bad decisions, and hurtful acts. And so part of my job for the city is actually kind of justifying bad decisions and mistakes and problems that caused personal injury and damage. The book was really interesting to me because it was two psychologists using anecdotal evidence from human behavior about how our minds work to self-justify and create self-deception about whether or not we've ever been wrong. And so it's a lot of interesting psychological theory about how it's a very human response to error is to deny that there has been any error, and to even trick yourself into thinking that you were right about something when you weren't right. So I found that very interesting, and somewhat because it related to my job and somewhat because it related to my personal life. It really was about the idea of cognitive dissonance, and what I learned from that was basically we all want to think we're good people and that what we're doing is good, and so when we're faced with evidence that we made a mistake or we're wrong, our brain works to tell us, no, you didn't make a mistake, you weren't wrong, someone else was wrong. So I thought that was an interesting book. It was assigned to all of us, and Gail Baird, this is one of her things that she suggested that we should all read. I connected that to the theme of change, back to that thing of like, the reason people might have a resistance to change is because they're afraid that they might make a mistake in the new situation. And also, it would take admitting that things aren't perfect and right now to decide that you wanted to have a change. You'd have to admit that there's something wrong with the current situation. Another thing we learned is that there's a process of transition. So a change is the new thing, the event, or it can be a loss. It can be the loss of something or someone. Something new that starts or stops and takes place at a certain time. So change is the event, and the transition is the process of getting accustomed to the event. So in transition, we have to figure out a new way of understanding the situation. It goes on inside a person, not on the outside, although I think you can also have a group transitional period, so you can have a change and then the change happens one day, it's snowy or something. And the group can also have a time period of adjusting to the transition, but this is kind of the psychological process that we did in the Path to Leadership was a lot of internal looking at yourself and how you respond to things. The transition typically, takes longer than the change did. So there's a change, and then to get used to it takes a longer time, and it starts with an ending. There is, even though not all change is bad, the transition period does often have a sense of loss from whatever the old way was, whatever you had before, and people tend to, hold on to that a little bit. And now Jacob is going to tell us more about what we've learned in the Path to Leadership about the process of adjusting to change.
Good boy, Jacob.
So, during the Path to Leadership, we did a interact profile. It's a worksheet where we took a survey to determine personality types. We learned there's 4 different types of personalities. There's supporters, supporting analyzers, or analyzing, drivers, driving, promoters, promoting. And I'm going to give you an example of what each personality, just a quick rundown on how they work. So I'm going to use these emojis as I'm going to use them for example. So let's use, let's use this guy here as a supporter. So supporters, they're cooperative, relaxed, and collaborative. Analyzers, this guy here, those are people who want data in situations. They be objective, they seek structure. Drivers, this guy here. He's competitive, urgent, and they're task-oriented. Promoters, we use this guy with the flag. They're relationship-oriented, express emotion, or outgoing. These personality types can change depending on condition. There are 2 types of conditions. There's favorable and adverse. Each person can perceive change differently. Someone may perceive change in a positive way, and this would create a favorable condition. Someone else may perceive that same change in a negative way, and this would create an adverse condition. So the person who has a driving personality type under favorable conditions could be a promoting personality under adverse conditions. When I took the profile analysis, I found I'm a supporter personality under favorable conditions and a driving/analyzing under adverse conditions. changes result in a transition. This graph here represents that transition. As you can see by the graph, an individual will first respond with shock during a change. Then they will move to denial. When they are in the denial stage, their productivity can increase. And then they move to anger and then depression. While a person experiences depression, their productivity is at its lowest. Then productivity will slightly increase when they go to engagement and decisions. During the denial down depression state, down in the dip there can be low stability, high emotional stress, control becomes a major issue, people conclude the worst, and conflicts can increase. Some people get stuck in a vortex depression, that's that circle there in the middle, during the change. A good leader will guide individuals out of the vortex. Always remember that we understand ourselves, but a good leader will understand their team along with themselves. Next is Jeremy Hunt with Facility Services.
Path to Leadership program has given us many opportunities to grow. One such experience was a workshop put on by Steve Hanbara titled Developing the Leader Within. While I've held several titles throughout my career of leader, a lead, a foreman, a manager, a business owner, it's easy to forget that each of us can be effective leaders within our teams and bureaus wherever we are at today. Throughout this workshop, we learned that there is possible to see yourself as a leader without holding the title, how to better know when to lead and when to follow, as well as the attributes of effective leadership that help us to build trust and to apply interpersonal skills that support engaging in difficult conversations. Often, we tend to avoid conversations of difficult or controversial topics. However, taking the leadership approach can often aid us to overcome these obstacles. Change can be one of the most controversial and difficult conversations that we can have within the city today. Everything from changing the way we operate to changing views as our city evolves and changes around us. Even the physical change as we move from one location to a temporary home while our buildings undergo change. Go ahead and read the next slide. Dr. John Connor is a renowned leader in organizational change and suggested a strategy for change management that consists of an 8-step process to deal with change. Create. The first step to establish a feeling of urgency towards change. This is to help others see the need for change through a bold and aspirational opportunity statement that communicates the importance of acting immediately. Build. The second step is to formulate a guiding coalition. A team needs a coalition of effective people, born of its own ranks, to guide it, coordinate it, and communicate its activities. Form. Now the next step towards change involves developing a strategy to bring about change. This requires having a plan and a vision. Clarify how the future will be different from the past and how you can make that future a reality through initiatives linked directly to the vision. Enlist. The fourth step is to communicate or put forth the vision or strategy for change. Large-scale change can only occur when numbers rally around a common opportunity. They must be bought in and urgent to drive change, moving in the same direction. Enable. One must now empower the employees for taking action to incorporate these changes. Removing barriers such as inefficient processes and hierarchy, providing the freedom necessary to work across silos and generate real impact. Generate. Formulating and generating short-term goals and achieving them is the next step. Wins are the molecules of results. They must be recognized, collected, and communicated early and often to track progress and energize the team to persist. Sustain. Capitalization of wins or gains in order to produce bigger results is the seventh step. Press harder after the first successes. Your increasing credibility can improve systems, structures, and policies. Be relentless with initiating change after change until the vision is a reality. Institute. Incorporating new and better changes in the workplace culture is the last step. articulate the connections between the new behaviors and organizational success, making sure they continue until they become strong enough to replace the old habits. While the city may be working towards change management strategies with its general framework, following KID President clip may be some honest examples of how we all react to change.
How you can change the world. Some people think you should just complain about it. I won't change the world, they'll just make it bad. Some people think you gotta have lots of money. Some people think you have to be really loud and yell a lot. It's like with a bullhorn shouting, "Hey you, yeah you, do it my way, right now, you heard?" Other people choose to just make fun of everything. That's dumb, everyone's dumb. It's easier to make fun of stuff, but it's cooler to make stuff. Some people think changing the world can only be done by the smartest person in the world. Just put them in a room, let them figure it out. The solution of world hunger? Food. So easy. Some people see the bad in the world and they just decide to ignore it. But that won't help anything. Some people think you have to be really famous and super cool. In fact, lots of people think you have to be really powerful to make a difference. Like being mayor, or senator, or president. The truth is, a title doesn't make you more important. The world is changed by you.
I love the KID President.
I'm Jennifer Thomason with Risk Management, and one of the most important things that I learned from the Path to Leadership program is really that anybody can be a leader. It truly is a skill that can be learned. Most experts think just with a decision to decide that you want to be a leader through gathering skills, reading articles, getting a mentor, joining programs like the Path to Leadership, and then through self-reflection. Those are three key things to being a leader. So as leaders in an organization, whether you have the title of supervisor or manager, or whether you are someone in your work group that people follow, how can you help people go through change easier? How can you help the people around you get through that transition curve that Jacob talked about smoother and faster? One of the ways is through having really clear communication around expectations. That seems to be the key thing, is clarity. And with the Portland building move, Kelly Ball talked a little bit about all of the communication and really only giving out good information as they have it and making sure that it's clear and people understand it. The other thing is, within that, you need to acknowledge that there is a change and that the process of change can be difficult. So one of the other things that you can do, and Jacob talked about this a little bit, is to look at those interact profiles that he mentioned. And as a leader, this is where the self-reflection comes in. If you have this information, you can understand more about yourself and how you deal with change, but then also trying to understand the people around you and what information might help them get through change faster and move along that transition curve at a faster rate to help people be more positive about changes. So the different profiles want different communication and want different information. So analyzing people focus on logic and facts. So they want to understand how the change impacts their work. They also want clear, logical, and unemotional communication. The driving profile is decisive and focuses on the tasks and results. So drivers would ask, what impact does this change have on my tasks and my ability to create results? They would look for something that's quick and to the point in their communication. So for analyzers and drivers, something that is more fact-based, quick bullet points, maybe just an email communication is really what they're looking for. Something that's fact and task-oriented. The promoting profile is more encouraging and positive. They would ask who the change impacts, who's affected by the change, and they want more communication that's sociable. The supporting profile focuses on relationships, fairness. They want to understand the why behind the change. To the supporters, trust is really important. So really sincere, value-based communication is important to them. So for the promoters and supportive, they're more people-oriented. So they might actually want communication that's in a meeting or that's face-to-face, and they might not really appreciate just a fact-based, bullet-pointed email for their communication around change. So after a leader has communicated the expectations and the information about the change, it's really responsible to take responsibility as it's important to take responsibility in your role as a leader and to act in a positive, engaged, and committed manner. And one example of that is being able to model the behavior that you want to see in the people around you. And where I saw this recently was in, so with risk management, like Kelly said, our move to the temporary space is coming up soon. And in one of our staff meetings a few months ago, we had started getting some information about what the temporary space was going to look like. We didn't have all of the information, but it was just enough for us to start realizing this is going to be a really big change from what we're used to. We're going to be moving into a much smaller space. And we were in our staff meeting talking about this, and we were kind of getting in that little circle that was on Jacob's transition curve, that little circle of negativity, and we weren't being super positive about it. But Tanya Harris was in our staff meeting as a representative from the Change Management Committee. And she was sitting there quietly listening and listening to all of our concerns. And she spoke up and she was like, guys, I hear what you're saying. I'm also going through this transition. And I'm really looking at this as a positive, being able to go through my stuff and get rid of things. And she acknowledged our concerns. She helped say that this is going to be a positive and we can look at it in that way. And then she also was like, and we have to think about the big picture. And moving back to the Portland building, it's going to be amazing. It's going to be great. And just having her say that little thing in that meeting really helped me kind of shift my perspective and move along that curve. She didn't have to, but as a leader, she took that initiative to try to model behavior that, that we were trying to create around us. So I thought that was amazing. And speaking of Tanya, she is on vacation today and not able to be here, but she did create a video for all of you to enjoy. Thanks.
Do you carry this hinge? Yeah. Can I get you any kind of 4 holes, 2 holes, bronze? No hinge at all?
Why don't we just go with the one in your hand?
Well, these are different.
Drop one. Left.
Hey, how's it going? Hi, Jerry, I'm sorry I'm late. George and I, we've been coming up all night long. I can make up the time to you any number of ways.
How about this? Finish this thing up today.
Couple questions for you.
No more questions. Just figure it out for yourself and get it done.
All right, Jerry. But I can figure it out myself any way you want.
Just do it.
Hello, I'm Tanya Harris with the Bureau of Internal Business Services. And over the past few years, I've learned a lot about change and what it takes to be a change agent. In this short video, I'll share with you some key traits to become a successful change agent and to handle change. And also share the perspective of others that we work with, how they've adapted to change, advice they have for change agents and leaders, and some of the tools they have used to help them, and much more. Hope you enjoy the video.
The success rate of major change initiatives is quite low. It's actually 54% of all change initiatives are successful. It's a very low number. The top reason change initiatives fail is something we call change fatigue. It means too many change initiatives without prioritization. The second reason is the CEO and his or her top team are just dictating what should change. What is this change program about? That actually doesn't work very often. The organization can become quite passive aggressive and wait until that CEO or executive team turns over before they actually enact the change. The biggest mistake change managers make is thinking that communications is the same as engagement.
So when I started my career and you're looking for a job and what do I enjoy, I described it that I wanted to work for somebody who had a good idea where he or she was going, had competencies to get there, and I didn't feel like I had to wash my hands after I shook hands with them. Now, of course, being in the workforce and knowing more terms, I now know those are things called vision, competencies, and integrity. And quite frankly, they're very important for leadership because people do make decisions about who they want to follow and how far. And that plays into whether or not someone will follow you when you introduce a change to them. Change is not intrinsically good or bad. And so it's actually important to discern between whether or not someone's trying to follow down a wrong path or a good path. And my advice is, don't ever talk yourself out of the ability to discern those things. Otherwise, you can have leaders leading people to bad ends just as you can have leaders leading people. So I would say don't give up on the ability to say, I need to think that through. I need to think through that change for myself.
On state, I was the head of 2 departments. You have a lot of authority when you're the head of 2 departments.
That's for sure.
And I came here to the city and I was an individual contributor, which in some ways was a lot easier because it was just me and I was responsible for my own work. But it was different because I was responsible to meet everybody else's expectations versus them meeting my expectations. So there's a lot of, I don't know, it gave me a new appreciation for what my staff did because it had been too long since I'd been line staff that I had forgotten the level of hustle it takes to be an individual contributor with a huge workload. And so I had to adjust my own thinking.
Here's a quote for you by H.P. Lovecraft. The oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear, and the oldest and strongest kind of fear is the fear of the unknown. So that deals a lot with change. For instance, in facilities, we have a new division manager, we have a new O&M manager, we have a new supervisor, we have new dispatchers, we have new apprentices. There's a lot of new, and with all of this new comes a lot of fear that people have. We've also went from a demand-based work order system to try and transform that into a PM program that focuses more on the longevity of our assets that we have for the city. Ultimately will increase satisfaction by the customers. But that's a huge change for the team that has operated for many years on a demand-based program. So to bring about all of this change, we've also went through a shop reorg where all of our routes were rebid. That in itself brought a whole lot of things out, and a lot of stress was revealed. But, and I know that change is tough. People like a routine. It's comfortable, it's predictable. Change brings a lot of discomfort, and there's a lot of fear of the unknown. And this leads to a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety. It triggers a lot of emotions in people.
I go back to those 3 things. So have you communicated what the end vision is going to be for people? This is actually how it's going to improve things for the community, for our workforce, That's important to be able to institute a change. Do you have the right people working on the project or on the change? Do you have the right competencies? Because if you don't, that will be very apparent that you don't. So you've got to make sure that you've got the right people, the right skill sets in order to institute that change. And you also need to have integrity about it. We welcome ideas when people give you pushback, because if you agree on the goal that you want to achieve, be flexible about how it's going to get done. Not only does that help give people who are involved in the change more ownership and more control, but they also recognize that you're not just, you need to do this because I told you to. That hasn't worked on people for a long time.
I know that in all of the chaos, there's a lot of turmoil. It's a dark time, and there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of unknown, but I can say that it will help you seize the opportunity. People will focus on the light in any dark room. So you can choose to be positive and accept change, because there's good that can come out of that. There's opportunities that could come out of that, and people start noticing those that are taking the change and adapting well to it. Those are the ones who are going to, who are being singled out by management and being acknowledged, and that's the people that I feel management wants to elevate. So in our darkest times and our most tumultuous, in the change environment here, try and be positive.
And sometimes it seems like that's the hardest part for our environment. People don't want it to change necessarily, but things have to change. We have to move to a more automated and a more tangible product. In this day and age, you're used to doing every single thing online, and if you can't, then you think, I don't want to even work with this company. Well, nobody has any choice but to work with us,
Right.
And using all of our technology to quantify things we're not used to quantifying is difficult for people to get around. In HR, you can't just measure everything on how long did it get from A to B, because the quality of how it got from A to B matters.
So if there were no change, there'd be no butterflies. It's inevitable, progress is on.
Until next time, have a fantastic day.
Thank you, PACT leadership team, for the great presentation. So at this time, we're going to take a quick break, so 15 minutes, and come on back after that. We're going to do some raffle. We want you to be here for the raffle. If we call your number, you need to be in your seats. Thanks so much. Enjoy your break.